Pleased to be joined by Shane Zylstra, former wide receiver for Minnesota State in Mankato. Still in Mankato right now in the days heading up to the NFL draft. I guess, first of all, you had a fantastic career at Minnesota State, and it ended in the national championship this season. Unfortunately, you guys lost to West Florida, but what was your whole career like, and especially the last 3 seasons making such deep playoff runs?
Yeah, just to be able to make those playoff runs and compete at a very high level, it's exactly why I came to Minnesota State Mankato. Probably the number one reason, honestly, is because they're so successful, and I wanted to help continue that tradition and carry on that legacy.
So after the season ended, obviously it's a tough way to go out, but how soon after the end of that game did you start thinking ahead and training for the NFL?
Well, actually, towards the end of the playoffs and all that, I kind of had everything set up, where I was going to go, where I was going to train, so I could hit the ground running. I don't know the exact time frame, but it was within a few days. I think maybe that next week is when I started training and hit the ball rolling because I wanted to get started and get ahead as much as I can.
And obviously this was happening in January before all the coronavirus pandemic stuff hit. So what were you able to do? Where were you able to travel to before things kind of stopped?
Yep. So I actually was training in Eagan. I commuted every day from Mankato to Eagan. And it was probably the week before actually my pro day at the University of Minnesota that everything kind of got shut down, which was pretty unfortunate. But I'm in the boat with a lot of others as well.
And so assuming your pro day didn't happen, how are you getting the word out to NFL teams? Did you put together like a highlight reel? Did you put together a video of you doing kind of the drills like the 40 and stuff like that?
Yep, that's exactly right. We have a little bit of film of me training. Some scouts are taking the times into consideration, some aren't, which is totally fine. We understand that, given the circumstances, but just trying to show that how I move, I'm able to bend, speed, all that kind of stuff. And so we sent that out. So hopefully we hear back, very shortly.
Obviously, you have a brother in the NFL, Brandon, who played for the Vikings, played for the Panthers, and he came from a Division III school. You're coming from a Division II school. What sorts of advice has he given you about the process and making yourself look attractive to teams?
Right. A ton of advice. He actually came and lived with me for a few weeks with my wife and I. We have a spare bedroom. So he came and lived with me, and we were training at the same place. So, day in and day out, all day, every day, it was, talking the verbiage of the NFL, different things like that, what it means to be a professional, how to conduct yourself. So there's a lot of advice that went into it. We ran through a lot of routes, both he and I, shoulder to shoulder, just trying to get, the steps down and the footwork and all that. So he was a tremendous help and, a ton of advice.
And I know it's cliche, but it's also unavoidable. You're a wide receiver from Minnesota State. The immediate comparison is obviously Adam Thielen, just based on the success he's had with the Minnesota Vikings. Have you been asked about Adam Thielen? Do you talk with Adam Thielen at all? Because you guys were obviously in the same position.
Yeah, that's right. We've had a few conversations, not too in depth. Haven't been able to work out with him, obviously, because everything's, happening around the world right now, which is totally understandable. But yeah, definitely heard that quite a few times. We were two different players, obviously coming from the same school, wide receiver. But I mean, I think he'd be the first to tell you that we're two different players. Just with similar backgrounds.
Who have you talked to? Have you had any formal interviews with any teams or even just, minimal contact with any teams in particular?
So I haven't had any formal interviews via Zoom or FaceTime or anything like that, but I've had quite a few teams, just about every team, reach out to either my agent or myself, just, connecting, asking about some medical history and stuff like that, and just getting a phone number down for draft day.
Whether it's late in the draft or undrafted, you feel pretty confident you're going to get a shot somewhere.
Yeah, and that's all I'm asking for is an opportunity. Obviously, again, that small school knock a little bit and the pro days being canceled. I'm just hoping for an opportunity to really showcase my talent to whatever team that is.
All in all, obviously, at the end of the week, you will probably know one way or another what your situation's going to be. What has this whole journey felt like for you?
Well, it's been crazy in more ways than one, obviously, with everything going on in the world. Again, like we talked about, it's just very unique circumstances. And for myself and many, many others, it was really only those guys at the combine that were able to get those numbers down, which, it is what it is. And those are the guys that are going to get drafted. But it's just been a crazy experience. It's been a fun experience, a huge learning curve for me. So I'm just excited to see where it takes me.